is one of the things that when you're wanting everything to be right, a lot of times you make a lot of mistakes and you are quite rough on people and you forget.
I don't care what they think about me.
Robinson and his wife Frances are accused of negligence, false imprisonment, and hostile work environment. And those are just some of the claims brought against the legendary singer by 4 women who we only know as Jane Does.
We filed a complaint against William Smokey Robinson Jr. We believe that Mr. Robinson is a serial and sick that must be stopped.
Diana Ross has revealed Smokey Robinson's darkest secret, and the allegations are disturbing. 4 women, 17 years, and a locked bedroom they all describe the same way. They say the power was never just in his music. It was in what he could get away with.
As low-wage workers in vulnerable positions, they lack the resources and options necessary to protect themselves from throughout their tenure as employees for the Robinson.
Now it's all coming out. Names, dates, routines, and a system some say was built to protect one man at any cost. And here's what makes it harder to ignore. Years ago, long before this became a court case, Diana Ross walked away from Smokey Robinson. She didn't go to the press. She didn't file a complaint. She just ended it, quietly.
She wrote a book at one point, and she said the two of you actually were dating at one point.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did that last a long time, or was that just sort of brief?
Well, it lasted probably longer than it should because I was married at the time.
It seemed small at the time, but looking back now, after everything that's come out, it doesn't feel small anymore. It's something much harder to look at. In the heart of Smokey Robinson's lavish Chatsworth estate sat a room his employees knew too well, the Blue Bedroom. That's where it all began for Jane Doe 1. She was hired as a housekeeper in January 2023. Every weekend, she was the only one on duty. That's when Smokey would make his move. On a typical Saturday, defendant Smokey Robinson would take defendant Frances Robinson to the nail salon and would rush home, knowing that he would be home alone with plaintiff JD1. It was a routine, predictable, calculated. He'd call her into that blue bedroom, lock the door, kick the dog out, and then strip to his underwear. He would then neatly place a white towel on his bed, not to soil the bed linens. Then came JD1 described in horrifying detail how Robinson would begin to kiss JD1 in her mouth, neck, and breasts. Then he would roughly penetrate her V with his fingers, and proceed to penetrate her V with his erect manhood. She says he never used protection. He had it inside her, and she begged him to stop. In a desperate attempt to get him to stop, she would proclaim, "You're married," to which he would casually ignore. And this didn't just happen once, it happened 7 times. The last time was February 17th, 2024. And then she resigned. But it didn't stop there. JD1 wasn't the only one. Despite having full knowledge of his prior acts of SA, Frances Robinson failed to take appropriate corrective action. That's right, his wife, Frances Robinson, is named in the lawsuit too. She allegedly knew everything. Not only did she ignore it, the lawsuit says she added to the torment. She would regularly scream at JD1 in a hostile manner, using ethnically pejorative words. JD1 says she worked 10-hour shifts, never got lunch breaks, never received overtime pay, and was verbally all the while. But she still stayed, because she was afraid. She feared losing her livelihood, the possible adverse effect on her immigration status, and being threatened by Smokey Robinson's well-recognized celebrity status and influential friends. And that's just one woman. There are 3 more, each with a story just as dark and just as detailed. As the allegations stack up, the pattern becomes painfully clear. This wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a system of one that Jane Doe 2 says she endured for over 5 years. She started working for the Robinsons in May 2014. By the time she resigned in February 2020, she had been SA'd and harassed by Smokey Robinson countless times. Defendant Smokey Robinson's brutal sexual advances were constant and even predictable throughout her employment with defendants. Much like JD1, JD2 was lured into secluded parts of the house. She was summoned to the laundry room, the garage, places without cameras where Smokey would attack her. When arriving, he would immediately grab her and begin to penetrate her V with his fingers, causing her excruciating pain, and then would proceed to SA her. This wasn't just SA. This was manipulation, threats, and power. Robinson used his celebrity status to intimidate her into silence. He would threaten her that if she refused to have S with him, he would make defendant Frances Robinson be mean to her, which she was very capable of being. Over the course of 23 months, JD2 says she was degraded, humiliated, and forced into compliance by the same man who had once been an icon of smooth R&B. But JD2's story isn't just about SA. It's about a system designed to keep her silent. She feared for her job, her immigration status, and the threat of further retaliation. JD2 was unwilling to report defendants Smokey Robinson's unlawful acts to the authorities due to her fear of losing her livelihood, familial reprisal, public embarrassment, shame and humiliation to her and her family, the possible adverse effect on her immigration status, as well as being threatened and intimidated by defendant Smokey Robinson's well-recognized celebrity status and his influential friends and associates. Even after JD2 left, the abuse continued, and the silence persisted. Smokey Robinson had been getting away with this for years, and, as the lawsuit states, Frances Robinson enabled him. Defendant Frances Robinson failed to take the appropriate corrective action to prevent defendant Smokey Robinson's deviant misconduct against JD2. And it wasn't just SA. There were constant violations of labor laws. JD2, like JD1, was forced to work long hours without overtime, rest, or meal breaks. Defendants also failed to provide JD2 wage statements for the hours worked. What is clear here is that this wasn't a mistake. It was a conscious pattern of behavior, ignored and enabled by the very people who should have stopped it. The most haunting allegation may come from the woman who was there the longest, Jane Doe 4, known as JD4 in the lawsuit. Her employment spanned from October 2006 until April 22, 2024. That's nearly 2 decades of silence, 2 decades of fear, 2 decades of JD4 wasn't just a housekeeper. She was also Frances Robinson's personal assistant, cook, and even hairdresser. That meant proximity. That meant access. And that's exactly what Smokey Robinson used against her. Defendant Smokey Robinson first Yali her in 2007 when she accompanied him to his Las Vegas home. There, in his Vegas bedroom, far from cameras or witnesses, JD4 says Smokey SA'd her for the first time, but it wouldn't be the last. Over the years, Smokey continued this pattern in both California and Nevada. In one chilling description, JD4 recalls being asked to clean the Bell Canyon house. That's when it happened again. While cleaning the master bedroom, defendant Smokey Robinson showered and returned to his bedroom with an erect manhood. He then began to kiss her bosom, neck, and then SA'd her. The ritual never changed. The towel, the locked door, the same violations. When the other housekeepers would leave, he would summon her to his blue bedroom, place a towel down, pull off her clothes against her will, and proceed to SA'd her. According to JD4, he never used protection and ejaculated either inside her or across her body. Her words, much to his satisfaction and her abject humiliation. And like the others, she resisted. But resistance meant nothing when power was so heavily skewed. Defendant Smokey Robinson would also constantly admire and touch JD4's breasts, kiss her neck, and force his tongue into her mouth. He created moments to be alone with her, and when she wouldn't give in willingly, he took what he wanted. JD4 didn't speak out either. She couldn't. Why? She feared losing her livelihood, familial reprisal, public embarrassment, the possible adverse effect on her immigration status, as well as being threatened and intimidated by Smokey Robinson's well-recognized celebrity status. And Frances Robinson? Her role stayed consistent. She knew. The lawsuit states she had full knowledge of his prior acts of SA, but did nothing. Even worse, she allegedly enabled it. Frances Robinson also perpetuated a hostile work environment by regularly screaming at JD4 in a hostile manner, using ethnically pejorative words and language. The Robinsons didn't just fail to protect these women. The lawsuit says they created the conditions for overworking them, denying breaks, and withholding pay. JD4, like the others, worked 10-hour days, 6 days a week, traveling across state lines and cleaning their private homes for as little as $15 an hour. There were no overtime payments, no rest periods, and no wage statements. This wasn't just it was exploitation. But here's the twist that left everyone stunned. This wasn't the first time. There were other women, other settlements. The lawsuit states that Frances Robinson was aware of previous incidents. Not just rumors, but settlements. And still, she did nothing. This is not one victim. This is 4 named plaintiffs, with matching patterns, matching stories, and a timeline that spans from 2004 to 2024. As each woman's story unfolds, the pattern becomes suffocatingly clear. Not just the but the fear. A fear so deep-rooted it kept them all silent for years.
Principal causes of action against Mr. Robinson, in particular, are sexual battery, assault, false imprisonment, gender violence, and creating a hostile work environment.
These women were hired to clean homes, but were allegedly treated like they were disposable, forced to endure 10-hour shifts 6 days a week, no overtime, no breaks, no proper wage statements. And if they spoke up, they risked everything.
As low-wage workers in vulnerable positions, they lack the resources and options necessary to protect themselves from sexual assaults throughout their tenure as employees for the Robinsons.
And what did Smokey Robinson allegedly say when challenged? Nothing. He just continued. But he wasn't alone. The complaint alleges Frances Robinson, Smokey's wife and co-employer, not only knew about her husband's behavior, but regularly contributed to the behind the gates of their estate, behind the glamorous press photos and legacy awards, a system was allegedly built on control and coercion. A system these women say nearly destroyed them. But why now? Why speak out after decades of silence? The answer lies in a cultural shift, the rise of movements that have encouraged victims to come forward. The #MeToo era has opened the floodgates, and for these women, now armed with legal counsel, the time was finally right. Their attorney, John Harris, didn't hold back. He said plainly,
We filed a complaint against William Smokey Robinson Jr. We believe that Mr. Robinson is a serial and sick rapist that must be stopped.
He emphasized that this wasn't a misunderstanding, not a miscommunication. These women were and terrified into submission. And the lawsuit doesn't just seek recognition, it seeks justice. $50 million in damages. And that amount isn't random. The lawsuit states plaintiffs suffered and continue to suffer economic damages, as well as severe emotional and physical harm, in a sum not less than $50 million. JD 1-4, Summary Damages Section. They're not only asking for monetary compensation, they're asking for accountability, for a court to say, this happened, and it mattered. When the lawsuit was filed in Los Angeles Superior Court on May 6, 2025, the media frenzy was immediate. TMZ, People, The Cut, and Pitchfork ran the story across headlines. Fans were stunned. Detractors resurfaced. Supporters went silent. And then came Smokey Robinson's only comment. "I am appalled," Robinson said, adding, "I can't speak about this right now." Just those two sentences. No apology, no clarification, no mention of the 4 women who say he destroyed their lives. Just shock and evasion. But his lawyer, Christopher Frost, stepped in with fire. Frost didn't mince words. In a press statement delivered to major outlets, he called the lawsuit a shakedown, alleging the women were trying to cash in on Smokey's fame. The claims are vile and false, and the lawsuit amounts to nothing more than an extortion attempt. "We will aggressively seek dismissal," he said. He went on to say the allegations were full of inconsistencies, that the women's accounts couldn't be trusted, and that Smokey Robinson would not be commenting further at this time. But here's where the lawsuit hits back. Hard. This isn't a vague set of claims. It's not speculative. The lawsuit includes specific dates, locations, and ritualistic behavior repeated in each victim's story. Each Jane Doe, from JD1 through JD4, described the exact same sequence. Down to the same blue bedroom, the same towel, the same threats, and even the same bodily details. This level of detail across 4 separate plaintiffs who worked there during different time periods would be difficult to fabricate without collaboration. And according to the suit, these women were too afraid to even talk to each other during their employment. And it wasn't just the women allege verbal, racial slurs, and labor violations by Frances Robinson. The lawsuit claims she berated them with ethnically pejorative language and deliberately assigned demeaning tasks. Meanwhile, Smokey's legal team insists the entire thing is fiction. Frost hinted the plaintiffs may have been manipulated or incentivized, and even questioned their motives for waiting so long. The answer was painfully human.
These women were all low-wage earners, living from paycheck to paycheck. They all feared missing a payday and not being able to pay their rent or buy food for their families.
What's more, the women didn't know each other well. They worked in shifts, often separated. But they tell the same story over a span of 17 years, from 2007 to 2024. Smokey's lawyer called it extortion. He said what's inside the filing isn't opportunism. It's evidence. Years of suffering buried under fear. This wasn't the first time Smokey was accused. It was just the first time the victims had each other. Now, they want $50 million in damages and a public reckoning. By now, the public has seen the headlines. They've heard the names. But what most people don't understand, what even some fans refuse to believe, is just how massive this case really is. This isn't just a scandal. It's a war unfolding inside the courtroom. Because what these 4 women unleash with one lawsuit threatens to pull down not only Smokey Robinson's legacy, but the entire wall that has shielded him for decades. The case isn't built on rumor. It isn't fueled by tabloids or anonymous whispers. It's grounded in law, section after section of the California Civil Code, meticulously cited and filed in black ink on white paper. 16 causes of action, each one more serious than the last. Some deal with violence, others with coercion, and others still with the invisible weight of fear, the kind that keeps people working when they're broken, silent when they're in pain. It's rare to see a case this thorough in the world of celebrity. Most accusations against famous men never see the inside of a courtroom. They settle, they vanish. They are silenced with money, NDAs, and carefully worded PR apologies. But this is different. Because now, It isn't just about what Smokey Robinson allegedly does behind closed doors. It's about what his legal team has to explain under oath, about what Frances Robinson has to justify in sworn testimony, about what a jury of everyday people will see, feel, and decide in open court. And what makes it even more explosive is the silence. The fact that for nearly 20 years, no one says a word. Not the press, not the assistants, not even the former staff who must have seen glimpses of something. That silence isn't natural. It isn't an accident. It's carefully constructed, brick by brick, fear by fear, and now it's collapsing. And beneath that silence, there's something else, something buried deeper. The lawsuit drops a line that most people miss the first time, but legal insiders catch it immediately. Frances Robinson, they say, knows. She's been aware of past misconduct, not through speculation, not through gossip, through settlements. That means women have come forward before. That means deals were signed, cases closed, payouts issued. So if this goes to trial, and it very well might, it won't just be about Jane Does 1 through 4. It may become a public reckoning of everything Smokey Robinson has quietly put behind him. Everything he thinks is gone. Because prior behavior, in most civil cases, it's locked away, but not when there's a pattern, not when it speaks directly to intent or knowledge or power. In that courtroom, his past may not stay buried, and that's why legal experts are watching closely. Because if these women win, or even if they survive the motion to dismiss, it opens the door for others. People who stay quiet because they don't want to be first. People who believe no one will care. Now they know someone already has. That's what makes this case dangerous, not just to Smokey Robinson's image, but to the idea that a legacy can protect you from the truth. Because legacies don't cross-examine witnesses. Legacies don't survive when juries hear facts. And if this case moves forward, the courtroom won't care what records he sold. It will care what kind of man he really is. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.